Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Monday, July the 6th, 2020. Kelly, would you call roll, please?
Sure. Mark Vanneman,
Here.
Bruce Pauley,
Here.
Chad Kiger,
Here.
Ron Edwards,
Here.
and Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, we have everybody here tonight. Next item here is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at the June 1st meeting? And is there any comments or questions or anything? If not, like a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the approval, the minutes have been approved. Start with the old business. This is continued from the June meeting. It's docket number 2020. It's Habitat for Humanity of Boone County requesting a use variance to allow a single-family residential and multifamily residential zoning district. The property is located at 910 South Evans Street, and the property is zoned multifamily. Contract.
Thank you, sir. I know we're spread out a little bit. Make sure you keep your microphones close so they can pick it up on the back there in the back for our audience at home. So I know everybody's kind of moved down around a little bit, so make sure you take your microphone with you. Okay, just to walk through this background here a little bit. Habitat, this was a property that was donated to them. There was a single-family home on the property, which was desperately needing to be demolished and replaced with something else. So they approached us to try to figure out what to do with this property. It's kind of a unique piece. This is a property that originally was a 60-foot by 120-foot piece of property. At some point over history, the property owner sold the back 40 feet of the property to a neighbor around the corner for them, so making it a much smaller piece of property. And then also the challenge that we're here tonight is that this is zoned multifamily, but has historically been a single-family home and really can only be used for a single-family home. So I believe Habitat's been before you probably 4 times in the last 2 years. It seems like every property that they get is zoned incorrectly for a single-family home, and they have to approach you guys about it. So this is something that you guys have seen a couple of times before. So if they want to pull up the screen here, I can just show you what we're looking at here. This is a survey of the property with the proposed residence on it. As you can see, it's a 60-foot wide by 80-foot long piece of property. This couldn't, even if somebody wanted to use it for multifamily, it's not large enough to use for multifamily. It has historically been single family and always should be single family based on what's in the neighborhood. So that thus they approached us about getting the use variance put in place so they could build a single family home here. There is another agenda item relating to the garage on this property, but you can see how they've about shoehorned this house in there about the only place they could. And really this is about as big as a house you could get here and still meet all the setbacks. So the first request on this for you tonight is the use variance to allow a single-family property, a home to be constructed on a multi-family zone piece of property. As you're aware, multifamily zoning districts don't permit single-family homes, so we've got in a situation here where we've got a neighborhood primarily of single-family homes that's just not zoned appropriately for the historic use. In terms of the evaluation of the variance of use, you will find the 5 criteria and findings of fact in the staff report for the record. I'll just make sure to make mention of those for the record. And then, my papers are sticking together here. In terms, I'll just highlight a couple of those findings of fact for you here. We already mentioned the need for the variance arises from condition peculiar to the property. Again, it's zoned for multifamily uses. The surrounding neighborhood is primarily single-family uses with some homes that have been converted, and they're essentially requesting the variance to allow the existing development pattern to continue. Criteria number 5, the approval doesn't interfere substantially with the City of Lebanon comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan designates this property for residential uses, so they're proposing a use that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So again, finding of facts here for record, and staff has recommended approval of the variance of use request to permit a single-family residential use within the multifamily residential district. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I know we talked a second ago, but there is no way to move this so you can put a Two-car garage.
Yeah, well, I'll get in, do you want me to go ahead and address the second request for this one as well, or do we want to?
Let's do them one at a time.
One at a time, okay. I'll address that question here in a second when we get into the second variance request.
Okay, you done then?
Yep.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Ben? Would somebody from Habitat care to step forward?
My name is Kevin Schmidt. I'm president of the board of Habitat for Humanity, Boone County. And we just would say we build a pretty nice home. We work with a licensed architect and look at the building site, and we've squeezed about as much home as we feel we can in that particular site. We've also met with the homeowners who are here right next to that lot, and they've here to kind of support us to say they agree with, in a positive way, to having us build this in this location. They're kind of excited about having a nicer home than compared to what was there. I think you've seen the type of home that we build, and we're proud of it. So we've done all we can to make this work in terms of both with an architect and with neighbors, and to try to make this a positive step for everybody concerned. So we'd appreciate a positive vote on this matter.
Any questions for Habitat? Okay, is a public meeting. Would anybody from the audience care to address the board? Come forward, please.
Yes, my name is Debbie Smith, and I represent Robert and Tanya Linville. And I wanted to appear before the board to let you know that we initially were involved. There was a boundary issue, but since the meeting was tabled last time, we had the opportunity to meet with the representatives of Habitat. The Linvilles were present. Two of the representatives from Habitat were present. Everyone was very open, and we had a great discussion, and as a result of that, we were able to reach an agreement. The Linvilles are very supportive of the request that's being made, and Habitat has worked with them to resolve the boundary dispute and straightening that boundary up a bit, even possibly quit claiming a small strip of land, so that boundary issue will no longer be there between the future neighbor. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the Linvilles to let you know that they are supportive of the request. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Come forward, please.
Hello, my name is Vince Morrow. I live 2 houses south of the proposed site at 924 Evans Street. And I have nothing against Habitat as far as their houses. What they build beautiful houses. But I personally feel that this lot is too small. The house that's set there, granted it was an old house, it was a 2-story house. Downstairs was 3 rooms, the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room, and the 2 bedrooms were upstairs, and it had a 1-car garage. The house they have proposed is a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house with a garage, and if you look at the diagram of the house itself, the front porch sets 5.5 feet off of the sidewalk. Not lined up with the other houses like the old one was. The house to the south, 916 Evans Street, sets 22 feet back off of the road. My house sets 23.5 feet back off the road. When I walked out in my front yard before, I could look down the street. I seen a maple tree. Now, once this house is built, I'm going to look down the street and see a driveway, a porch, and a house sticking clear out to the sidewalk. When I asked about this, they said in the old neighborhoods like that, they line them up with the neighbor houses, and that's how they can avoid the 25-foot setback. Now, if you look at the diagram, the 25-foot setback would run right through the middle of the living room and the kitchen. And granted, this is a small lot. What house did they line it up with for the house itself to start 11 feet 7 inches back from the sidewalk? It wasn't mine. It wasn't the neighbor house. There's 4 houses through there. One is the Linville house, but it faces Walnut Street. If they lined it up with their house, they lined it up with the side elevation, not a front elevation.
Sir, one question. Right now, this particular docket we're on now is about the variance, just to take it out of the multifamily. The next docket is going to discuss.
That's fine, I can speak
So,
then, or I can.
Let's
it's
go
the
ahead,
same
if
thing.
possible, come back in 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds
Thank
great.
you. Okay, is there anybody else that cares to speak? Okay, we'll close the public end of 2020, the variance to change it over to single family. Ben?
If you had any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to address them on the use variance.
On the use variance, I don't think anybody has any questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance of use to permit a single-family residential use within the multifamily residential zoning classification.
I'll second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Okay. Mark Banneman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards. And Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, docket 2020 to switch it over to single family has passed. Now, the next one will be docket 2021, which we'll start talking about the house itself. Here again, the property is 910 South Evans here in Lebanon. It's zoned multifamily, well, it's zoned single family now. The lot is a 60-foot wide by 80-foot deep. And this is the first time the request variance has appeared before the City of Lebanon zoning. The currently contains a vacant single-family home with no garage. Ben?
All right, I will walk through this, and actually I will be able to address some of the issues that were brought up by Mr. Morrow here in a second. If they pull the screen up again. This is the proposed site plan for the house, and looking at the setbacks. When you're in an existing developed area such as this, we use infill standards to determine that front setback, and what that means is not that we line it up with any specific house. We take the average front setback of, it's usually 3 or 4 houses on either side up and down that street, and that's what I did to come up with. In this case, it's 11 feet. It's about 11 and a half feet from the porch to the front setback, which is what you see this number here. So the porch extends out to this spot. It's about 11 and a half feet to the front property line. And that is based on a calculation I did of probably about half a dozen to 10 homes, either north or south of this lot, to come up with that front setback. So it doesn't necessarily line up specifically with a home on either side, but it's an average of the setbacks, and there are some that are much less than this and some that are more than this on either side. So it's an average of those numbers. So that's where we came up with the front setback. That allows them to have a 15-foot setback on the rear, which meets the required setback. The side setbacks for a typical single-family home are 7.5 feet. So you can see here they've got a 7.5 foot. The house right now sits 7.5 feet from the south property line and about 9.5 feet from the north property line. So in essence, the house sits on every setback on either side of the home. So the issue here is that in order to make this fit, we also require an attached 2-car garage on any new build. So in order to fit an attached two-car garage, they could not meet the setbacks. And so the determination here was that it made more sense to build a house that met the setbacks, because these are small lots with houses around that don't necessarily meet the setbacks either. It was more important to meet the setbacks than it was to try to squeeze in a house with a two-car garage. If the 40 feet behind this home hadn't been sold at some point, there is an alley back there, and this would have had a rear-load garage facing the alley. Unfortunately, they don't have that 40 feet nor access to the alley anymore because of that sale that happened sometime in the past before Habitat owned this lot. So this is what they're left with, is a 60-foot by 80-foot lot. They can make a house with an attached one-car garage work and meet all the required setbacks that we've determined for this lot. So from that perspective, then they've requested relief from that attached two-car garage requirement to allow them to do a single-car attached garage that's front load off of Evans Street that you see here to the south side of the house. I'll just see if I make sure I didn't miss anything on the staff report here. Just for the record, we have addressed the 3 findings of fact required for variances. The approval will not be injurious of public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The use and value of the area adjacent will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. In this case, there are several homes near that don't have a garage at all, or maybe only have a detached 1 or 2 garage. So this is characteristic of the area to have a little bit of everything, or in some cases not at all. In terms of the strict application, in terms of UDO, that would in essence render this lot useless. You literally, unless you go a much smaller house footprint, you can't make a house fit. And their house is only 28 feet wide already, so to try to reduce that another 7 or 8 feet to fit a garage, the house wouldn't be, at least the type of house they construct, the single story house would not fit on this lot. So planning staff has recommended approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the attached two-car garage requirement. Happy to answer any questions.
My only question is, why can't the house shift 7 foot to allow for a two-car garage?
Because then it'd only be 2 feet off the property line. And it wouldn't meet the setback requirement.
And this is a single-story structure? Okay.
Correct. So right now, the house to on the south side, which is a side setback, is 7.5 feet, so it sits on the setback on the south side. On the north side, which is the other side setback, it's right now about 9.5 feet. So it theoretically could shift 2 feet, but it's not going to get you a two-car garage to do an additional 2 feet.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a public meeting, so Mr. Morrow, you want to come back up and?
You want to let the applicant speak?
Okay, hold on just a second. Just got to let the applicant speak if they don't have anything to say. Okay, then you can come up.
Do I need to repeat anything I said before?
Nah.
Okay.
I mean, you can if you want to. I don't care.
No, if you want to hear it again, I'll be more glad to say it. Talking's not my problem. But anyway, my concern on this house, as I said, it's the front porch is 5.5 feet back. It starts all right on the sidewalk. The house is 11 feet back. The property was 60 foot wide, but with the agreement that the Linvilles came up with where they're buying 2 feet, that makes it 58 by 80. If you figure the numbers as far as square footage, before the house covered 36% of the property. Now with the 2 feet gone, it covers 45.1 for 1% of the property. So there's nothing left. For us old folks in the room, I can tell you exactly the history of the property. That slab behind it that was sold off used to belong to Forrest Gleb, and that's where he had his milk barn. And that was a 40-foot that was sold off to Forrest Gleb. After that, how that property came into the hands of Habitat, I don't know. but it was sold a few years ago to Phil French, that lives around the corner, because Habitat didn't want it. Now, Phil French bought it. He had hopes in building a garage on it. He was told no by the city because that made it an L-shaped lot, 2 different lots, and he couldn't make a driveway access across his backyard to the garage. Then they told him he had no access from the alley to build a garage, even though Forrest Gleb had a milk barn there. Okay, now he can't build a garage because there's no access, the lot's too small, da-da-da-da-da-da. So now here we are a few years later. Habitat gets the front part of the property. It is now 58 by 80, and they are cramming a house in it that's going to set 7 foot from an alley, 5 foot from a sidewalk, and now approximately a little over 7 feet from the Linville house. And that doesn't even come into play on the slab that's divided. If you look at the back of the property, you know, by the time you build the patio on, I mean, this house has no yard. It comes clear out to the sidewalk. And Ben said he takes an average, okay? I can tell you where the average comes in. The Linville house sets out farther because it's a side elevation. Across the street from that, that's a house that sits on Walnut. It's a side elevation. The house across the street from it sets back a little bit farther. Right across the street from this house is a multi-unit apartment complex that's owned by Bogus. Next door to it is a little prefab house that is owned by Ron Smith. That's a rental. Next door is Wanda and Alvy Likens. They built a deck on the front of their house. If you take the deck off, well, their house sets back probably maybe 15 to 18 feet off the sidewalk. Across the street from that at 1001 Evans Street is another Habitat house that was built, I think, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. It's owned by Nikki Summers. That house sets 25 feet back off the sidewalk. Okay, right next door to it used to be the Shirley house. Okay, it sets about 8 feet from the sidewalk. Across the street from that was the Tennell house that sets 20 feet back off the sidewalk just like mine. Now, I just told you a 2-block area. Okay, now, 5 years ago, if the average was 25 feet for the Summers house, now, nothing else has been built there or anything, and now this time the average is 5 feet off of the sidewalk. I mean, what happened here? I mean, you can't make a lot bigger. You know, you can make it smaller by selling off, you know, but this lot, if you really wanted to put a house on there that fit, it would be a tiny house. That's what this lot is. You know, our neighborhood is really coming up. We have new houses in the neighborhood. The city has bought property off of Noble Street and planning on a lot of work with the Abner Longley Park. You know, so we should have the same goal that comes from Memorial Park area. You wouldn't build a house 5 foot from the sidewalk, a block from where Memorial Park is. You know, even if it was Matt Gentry's house, right there on the corner. If something was to happen there, the city would not allow a new house to be built on that lot. It's too small. But on this side of town, it's okay. Let's overlook it because some people have different garages or no garages. You know, we have gravel in front of our house and no curbs. And it just isn't going to fly there. You know, I mean, and then this is a 3-bedroom home for a family. I don't know about anybody here, you know. I mean, yeah, you have a small yard, but then when you have a 3-bedroom home and you're going to have children and you have a 5-foot front yard and you have a 7-foot backyard, where's the children going to play? There's no cul-de-sac there for the parents to turn them loose in and say that's the babysitter. You know, so, I mean, as I say, I have nothing against the Habitat people or their properties or their houses. You know, If they was to make an improvement, I would say that their program needs a 5-year mentoring program after the people buy the houses, because a lot of it gets reverted back, to their old lifestyle. But other than that, they build beautiful homes, but a one-car garage, I don't have a problem with a one-car garage. If they could squeeze a 2-car on there, that'd be fine. If they want to build the first 2-story Habitat house there so they don't use up the whole yard, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to come out and turn. I have a beautiful front yard, and I turn and try to look down the street, and there's the house going to be sticking clear out to the sidewalk, blocking my view. And no one else would want that. That's really all I have to say. I mean, it's up to you guys, but I mean, in this, what I have found out with some of the zoning and the ordinances, since we've moved there, there's more demand for a fence setback than there is a house setback. A corner lot has 2 front yards, and a fence setback in my neighborhood, I'll have to set a privacy fence back 20 feet. But here, let's build a house and put it 7 feet from the alley and 5 foot from the front street. So, I mean, you really need to, you take the scales here and decide which is more important, a family home, or what, And so it's up to you guys. I hope you vote the right way. I hope I made some sense. And if you have any questions, I'll be more glad to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else care to step forward? Yes.
Is it appropriate?
Well, hold on just a second, though. Let me close the public end of the meeting. And now Habitat can come back up.
Let me address the setbacks first, just to make sure for the record that everything's been explained correctly. If they want to pull wake my computer up again here.
And do we have a street view rendering
Yeah,
of
let me
the
get that
structure?
pulled up too.
That'd be helpful.
So if they could pull this screen up again, just to make sure for the record we're identifying the setbacks correctly. Well, must have lost my connection here. There we go. All right. Oh, just so for the record, the front setback to the porch is 11.5 feet. The front setback to the actual house itself looks like it's about 18 feet. And that's to the front property line. The street is significantly out in front of that. So from the property line, the porch is about 11.5 feet. That setback was determined by the average of homes on either side, regardless of whether it's a front or side elevation. If it's on Evans Street, that's considered a front setback. So we look at the setbacks, 3 or 4 houses north and 3 or 4 houses south, and that average was about 11, I think it was 11.5 feet. It was exactly the number I gave them. So they have met that to the porch, 11.5 feet. The house
Is that a
about
covered
18.
porch?
Yes, it is. And that's why the porch is required to meet that setback, because it's a covered porch. It is 15 feet from the back property line, so at least 15 feet from the alley. And it meets all of our setbacks. This house meets all of our setbacks based on the infill standards for the front setback. They meet all the required side setbacks of 7.5 feet, the rear setback of 15 feet. The only place where we use the infill standard was on the front, and again, we did the calculation of the average of homes on either side. So it does meet all the required setbacks. The only discussion for the BZA is whether it's appropriate because of the lot size to allow the one-car attached garage.
Now I've closed the public end of the meeting.
Again, my name is Kevin Schmidt. We worked very hard to try to do everything we could to make this be appropriate, meet all the setbacks required by the city. And we would love to build a 2-car garage if there was space, but there isn't. And the homeowner that will be occupying this, we've gone through the property, the outline, the space, the yard that's left, and she is absolutely ecstatic to be able to be in this new home if that's allowed. So we would appreciate a positive vote for a one-car garage if possible. Thank
Do
you.
you have an elevation of the house?
With me, I don't, do we have we have provided that previously, I don't have it with me. I will tell you, it's 90% similar to what the other homes we build, but I don't have that with me, I'm sorry. I know we had to give it to you.
Yeah, I don't remember if I have it in the folder, though. Doesn't look like it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I don't have it, I'm sorry.
Okay.
This home would be similar to the one that you built on Northeast Street.
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
we passed that one a few months ago.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's a very nice house.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I guess comes time for a motion. Would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the development standards variance request to permit relief from attached two-car garage requirement of the EDO.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Nay.
Chad Kiger,
For the garage variance is what we're voting on.
Yeah.
For the single-car garage.
Yeah, aye.
Ron Edwards,
Nay.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 3-2. Good luck with your endeavor.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Docket number 2023, Chuck and Denise Wright. Property is located 225 West Maple Drive, Lebanon. Property is zoned single-family residential, comprised of approximately .34 acres. The lot is a corner lot and is generally 140 feet wide and 120 feet deep. Ben?
All right, the request tonight is for an accessory structure setback variance. The property owner came to us and indicated that they would like to put an above-ground swimming pool and what is defined as their backyard. If they want to bring the screen up, I'll show you the aerial photography of this property. So this corner lot, not only is it a corner lot, but it's kind of an odd-shaped lot, so most of this lot is their front yard. So everything that is west of the home and this front elevation and everything that is north of the home, this is all front yard where accessory structures aren't permitted. Really what they're left with in terms of putting anything anywhere is this small little backyard that you see here just south of the home. And they're intending to put a swimming pool in this little backyard here because that's really the only yard they have. We also require swimming pools to have a privacy fence around them, so they do have this area fenced in already, so they do meet all of our requirements. It's just that there's no way, unless the pool is only about 5 feet in diameter, to meet our 10-foot setback requirement. Because they really only have about 12 feet in depth back here in order for them really to use any of their yard whatsoever. So they have almost a half, or more than a quarter-acre lot, so it's a good-sized lot. It's just that, just the way the lot is configured and where the house sits, most of the yard is unusable in terms of accessory structure. So they have this house could have been probably 10 feet closer to the north and still met the setbacks to make more of a yard, but this is where it was they chose to put that, to situate the house. So it really makes their yard not useful at all in terms of accessory structures. So I will also pull up just so you can kind of see. Let me pull up. They've got a little bit of a drawing here. Let me see if I can rotate this real quick. So they've done a quick drawing here. This is kind of looking at that same fenced-in area. They've got about an 18-foot diameter above-ground pool that they're proposing. They've got it proposed at about 3 feet away from the house, and then it leaves about 2 feet between the pool and the property line. So they've put it about the only place they can. They do have overhead electric lines that you see here coming through this corner, so they can't move the pool under the electric lines. And then they've got a little bit of a patio. Of course, they couldn't move it further to the I guess, left on this, because then it gets even narrower. So this is really about the only place they could put a pool in this backyard, and this is what they're requesting the variance from. Like I said, it does have the privacy fence already, so it is screened from the neighbor's yard from that perspective. Just for the record, we do reference the findings of fact in the staff report. Approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Other than the setback issue, they have met all of our requirements in terms of providing a lockable privacy fence, so it's secure from typically any kids they see water, they're drawn to it. So they've met all the safety requirements in terms of providing the lockable gate. Use and value of the area adjacent will not be affected. Again, this is already behind an existing privacy fence, so in terms of what the neighbors are going to see or be impacted by it, it's not going to cause any impacts to them. And then the strict applications will result in practical difficulties. Again, with the way the house was situated on the lot, even though they've got a significant sized lot, the only usable space they have is behind this screen and fence. So they were really limited by the way the house was situated on the lot, and due to the fact it's a corner lot, really giving them just this small space where they've been able to squeeze the pool in order to be able to use their property in any way, shape, or form for an accessory structure. So because of those findings of fact, the planning staff has recommended approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the accessory structure setback requirement of the UDO. Happy to answer any questions.
We are good on the electrical.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the separation is exactly here, but our building inspector will review this to make sure that they're appropriately distanced from both the house and from the electric lines.
What's the depth of the pool?
48 inches? Yeah, it's a 48 inch, 4 foot pool.
Thank you, sir. Would the applicant please come forward? You can both come.
I told her she had to speak, and I thought she was going to call her and people see. My name's Chuck Wright. My wife and I, Denise, are requesting a variance on the setback. We hope you find this in favor so that you might enjoy a little chunky dunking once in a while.
Okay, thank you. Public meeting, being a public meeting, does anybody from the public have anything to say? Okay, we'll close the public end of the meeting. Board have anything for Ben or?
I just have a question for the homeowner. Have you guys by chance talked to your neighbor? Do they have any problems with being so close to the property line? I know their side yard is right on.
One neighbor is fine, the other one we hadn't heard anything from. We've already had conversations about where the fence was, and they're fine with it.
The fence is existing, you didn't just put it up?
No, I just didn't just put it up.
Right.
Okay.
That's all I got.
And all of the certified letters were good on that?
Yes, we did notify all the neighbors with certified mail. I don't even know that we got any calls inquiring about it, so.
Okay. Nobody else has a question? Looking for a motion?
I make a motion to approve docket 20-23 as written.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vandeman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, good luck.
Not so chunky, Duncan.
Okay, docket 2024, Joyce Skidmore of Lebanon Redevelopment. We're talking about the Brakeman Building. The subject property is 224 South Lebanon Street. It's zoned central business within the downtown overlay and comprised of approximately 1.4 acres. Ben, I'll let you take over, but this has been before us
Very good.
for
This
a
is,
couple other things, so.
this is a return visitor to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This was before you last in March. If you recall, this is a 4-story mixed-use building. At that time, they were proposing speculative retail on the entire first floor and then 3 floors of residential above it. Obviously, we know what's happened since February or March this year. And I was contacted by the applicant a couple months ago, and they said that the banks have totally shut down lending money for speculative retail, particularly in new markets like we are in our downtown. The bank basically gave them 2 options. Either you need to reduce the amount of speculative retail space in the building, or you have to have them you have to have signed leases before they would even lend the money, which again, in this market would be impossible to do. It could take more than a year, or even as many as 2 years before you could fully lease this building before construction starts. It's really just a difficult thing. In this market, there is no demand for new retail space, particularly in a new market like downtown Lebanon. We're getting a few projects that are happening out on I-65, but in terms of speculative retail space in downtowns, there's very limited demand for that because we haven't had any new construction in our downtown for since the CVS probably. It was probably the last new construction in our downtown. It's hard for banks to get comfortable lending money for a project like this. So in conversations with staff, we felt like with the uncertainty of being able to get signed leases on a building that's not even constructed, it could be years, we decided to look at options to reduce the amount of retail space on the first floor. So what they did, and this is going to be a multi-phase project. So this first building is primarily residential space. They have kept kind of the corner tenant on the south end of the building for a restaurant, but then they've converted the rest of the retail space on the first floor to residential units. In the central business district where this is located, residential is permitted, but only on upper floors of a multi-story building. So in this case, because they're moving residential down to the first floor, it requires a use variance. In this case, the hardship's caused by the market more than it is something specific to the property. But there really was very little other alternatives we can consider without indefinitely delaying the building construction. So what they've done here, if they want to pull up the screen and kind of show you, the building itself from an architectural perspective is very, very similar. What we did is look at trying to maintain the architecture on the first floor so it maintains the same look that you get from retail. The only difference being that you see more residential sized windows than the full-length commercial windows. Other than that, the materials stay the same, and in fact what they've done is extended some of the first floor materials up to the second floor. This would be the restaurant space you see here right in the foreground. So we worked very hard with them to make sure that we weren't getting into an issue where it felt like you were blocked off from the street. So we wanted to keep the building on the sidewalk. If you're feeling familiar with the Flats projects, they've got basically a landscape strip between the sidewalk and the building, so it really feels like it's distance from the sidewalk. It's not as inviting. There's no entrances off the sidewalk necessarily either. So we really wanted to keep the building front to be the focus on the street from an architectural perspective, but still allow them some flexibility on what the space looks like. Their architect assured me that they've built this building such that if the market turns in 10, 15 years, they could go back and revert this space back to retail space if they so chose. Just the market right now is not dictating retail space in our downtown. As I mentioned, this is a 2-phase project, at least hopefully it's a 2-phase project. On the east side of the road, we're hoping by that time the market's recovered and we'll be able to do some additional retail space on the first floor on the east side of the road. Just in terms of the timing right now and the situation that we're in right now, there really were very limited alternatives to look at here other than creating some additional residential space in this building, but certainly trying to maintain the architectural presence that the building had before. Try to zoom in on this a little bit so you can kind of see what the footprint looks like. Whoops. So So you can see here, they still have a significant restaurant space on that southern corner of the building, but then they've created some additional residential units that you see here. There's 4 additional units that they've created on the first floor. I'm sorry, 8 additional units that they've created on the first floor of the building. These are all, I believe, 1 and 2 bedroom units on this first floor, so they're the larger units. Just
What's
for
the square footage on those? Sorry.
The first floor space?
Each unit, it's hard to see.
It varies, let me see if I can zoom in a little farther. It varies from, I keep going too far. Looks like right around 600 square feet is what the 1 bedrooms are. And then the 2 bedrooms are closer to 1,000 square feet. Yeah, it looks like all the 1 bedrooms range from, it looks like the smallest is about 570 up to about just short of 600, and then you got about 1,000 on the larger ones. So they are the bigger units that they have in this building they put on the first floor.
What's this,
Yeah, go ahead.
what's this do for parking?
We are recalculating that. It actually really doesn't change the parking requirement much at all in terms of the overall space. When you look at retail spaces are usually like 1 space per 250 square feet, give or take. The typical 2-bedroom apartment requires 2 parking spaces. So we're actually probably lowering the parking requirement by putting this number of retail or residential units in the first floor. Because right now, if it's 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom apartment, then a typical 1,000 square foot retailer would have to have 4 spaces, and that apartment would only be required to have 2. And they were overparked before anyway. They had more parking that was required.
We're going to be okay with parking?
So I'm thinking, look out.
We don't have all night, Bruce.
If I remember right, we can reduce the parking, correct? A little bit?
Yeah, the overall parking
Potentially.
requirement should be slightly less than what it was before.
Is that going to do anything for landscaping? Are we going to increase the landscaping?
Well, they're not actually going to reduce the number of parking spaces. They're going to still put the same number in. It's just their overall requirement is reduced slightly.
Okay. No problem. Were you done?
Curiosity, Ben, the developer having trouble getting lending from the banks, or are they worried about the potential retailers getting lending from the banks?
I think it's the developer getting lending to construct the building is the issue right now. Frankly, we started this project 2.5 years ago, probably. Even at that point, the banks were not really doing cartwheels about doing a building like this in downtown Lebanon. Again, like I said, the CVS was the last new construction, so there's no comps. And the issue is a new construction like this, you got to get 20 to 30 bucks a square foot on retail space to be able to make the numbers work. And right now, somebody can go downtown and get something for 8 bucks a square foot. So the banks are looking at, one, the cost of construction and, the cost side of it, and then the revenue side, they're not matching up real well. Especially given the fact that we don't have overwhelming demand right now for retail, but we also don't have space really to lease to anybody either. So again, these are all question marks for the banks. So, the city is going to have to support this project financially as well to get it to go. But at this point now, with, again, the demand for retail space has bottomed out. That there is no demand for new retail space right now, unless it's purpose-built for a specific user. So that's where the bank said, look, either you're going to have to reduce the amount of space that's here because we don't think you're going to be able to lease it up, or you need to get leases in place before we'll even loan you the money to build the building. So that's kind of the trick bag they're in right now.
How many units total are as part of this project from residential?
44. I'll say she gave me the number just like a week ago, but I didn't have it in front of me.
That's the new number?
That's the new number.
My issue is that, I think we were all excited that we were getting this mixed-use building, and it was going to fit in nicely with the square or the downtown, and now ultimately we're building an apartment building, with a restaurant.
Yeah, in terms of the overall mix, it is still a
It
mixed-use
seems
building.
like a permanent decision for hopefully something that's not going to things are going to turn around at some point. Hopefully not 15 years like you had mentioned.
Well, yeah, I mean, but when you're thinking about
We don't
making.
know, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, the demand returns.
Yeah.
But in terms of spending the money to
Right.
redo the space, you're not gonna be able
Be
to do it
sitting there
right
empty
away.
for a long time.
And that's why they're, 2 or 3 years from now, we're hoping, we're talking to them about building the second building and having retail and office in that building. It's just with the demand the way it is right now, again, like I said, we're a new market for this sort of thing. If we'd had 3 or 4 mixed-use buildings that have already been constructed in Lebanon, and we've been able to prove that somebody can get 25 or 30 bucks a square foot for retail space, it might be a different story, but we don't have any comps for something like this. We're really kind of setting the stage right here with this first project. So yeah, I mean, when they called me, I wasn't terribly excited about making the transition, but when you really look at it, there's no real good
Kind
alternative.
of backed into a corner.
Yeah.
Maybe they can, like you said, convert those apartments back to retail when the demand recovers.
Yeah, I think if building number 2 goes gangbusters in 3 to 5 years and they're just busting at the seams for retail space, then they can start considering making some of those changes. But we've got to prove the market first for the banks even really to jump on board with this. We've even had to shop around we've sent them to local banks and hoping maybe they would have a better understanding of the local market, and that really didn't change necessarily the philosophy of what Lebanon's downtown is. Again, it goes back to what are the comps for something like this, and we don't have anything.
This is kind of getting off topic, but have you guys talked about like a different facade or something just to make it look like it's still kind of congruent with the retail shops as, from an eye level as you drive past the building? Is there something you can do to take away from that residential apartment look?
We did, and that's why we made sure to maintain the masonry across the entire front and not change that, so you see that same limestone look across the front. Really, the only thing that changed was the size of the windows, just because in a residential unit, you don't want the floor-to-ceiling windows. There's not a
Right.
whole lot of privacy. The other thing it did, I don't know if you can see it real well in this one, on the far north end, the building does change a little bit, so what we did is actually put awnings over those first-floor windows, again, to try to give it a little bit more of a commercial look to it.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know whether there would be any added benefit to continuing that all the way down the building. I think when you look at the architecture, I think because that building was a little bit different, it's the 2-story building, to try to match up with the building to the north, it made sense to kind of differentiate that one with the awnings. I'm not sure that there's a lot of benefit to doing from an architectural perspective to continue that down the building. So we've definitely maintained the masonry front, consistent all the way across, to try to, again, maintain that look.
What about the
entire
type of glass that's being used in those windows? Like, how in office buildings you have that you can't see in from
glaze,
the
the
outside,
glaze
it's like
or-
it just looks black, or like, because I'm just thinking about blinds and different curtains, and you're right there on the street, looking into somebody's living room. Can we require like a,
The applicant may be able to talk about that a little bit, what they're thinking about for privacy on these, but yeah, they're certainly concerned about privacy on those units for sure.
Yeah.
Which is why the windows got more residential sized. The only other real thing you do, I know some of them have done this similar residential sized window opening, but then they've kind of blocked out the bottom of it. So again, you can kind of see how it might transition back to retail. In this case, looking at it from a construction perspective, this made more sense from an overall cost to try to get this project accomplished.
Can you go back to that one picture where the awnings were?
Yeah, let me see if I can find one better here.
Is that going to be a common entrance, or?
There is, the way this is designed now, there is one common entrance into the residential part of the building. So this one here in the foreground, I guess they have to pull the screen up again for you. This one here in the foreground is the entrance for the restaurant.
Yes.
And then this second one that you see down here that's kind of behind the landscape island there would be the common entrance for the residential component. So all of the entrances to the actual units are inside the building. There's just a common lobby area that you see here. And then these down at the far end, again, they have awnings, but that's not actually an entrance in there from the street.
There's going to be an entrance from the back.
I believe so, yes.
But the applicant come up and say her piece too.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Joy Skidmore. I'm here on behalf of Forza Commercial Real Estate Development. So I know there was a question about the windows. So certainly that's something we want to talk to the architect about. It's a very good point because we want our tenants to have privacy, right? And so I think for the leasability of those units, we certainly will have to look at some sort of screening or something on those windows so you can't see in.
Any other questions?
Ben did such a great job. I don't know what other questions there could be. He stole all my thunder.
So in terms of percentage of retail versus residential, what was it before and what will it be now?
So we had a little under 10,000 square feet of retail before. Now I think it's 4583, 4593, something like that. So about
Okay.
half.
Okay.
So in 6 months, 5 years, you pick the date. Are you going to, it's not force is not the right word. I'm trying to think of how you can get it back into retail, get rid of the apartments on the first floor.
Yeah, I think the financials, certainly, you know, if you're getting $20 in rent is going to be more than, you know, what you're getting for the residential. So I think it'll come down to, it will benefit the project more if we could put commercial in there. And so again, market will dictate that, hey, let's take a look at, you know, leasing these out. It would make a great co-working space as well. As I was looking at this earlier today, we have a meeting room that we have put in for our tenants, but that, I mean, just lends itself in our lobby, actually, area is a meeting room. And so that lends itself to maybe converting to some sort of co-working space in the future as well. Those are pretty popular, especially with COVID now, where office spaces, I think, are going to dwindle down as well. Everybody wants to work from home.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody care to make a motion?
A public meeting.
Oh, okay, yep, sorry. This is a public meeting. Anybody from the public care to come forward? Since our room is totally full of vacant chairs, we'll close the public end of the meeting. And now we'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve docket 20-24 with a variance request, which, do we need to read those or anything? No?
No.
As written?
I want a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Okay. Mark Vandeman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck. When do you, I know it's early, when do you plan on starting?
So I was told by the developer, you need to get started on this yesterday, so hurry up and get this thing approved. So I'm hoping by this fall we'll be in the ground. That's the goal.
Great. Docket number 2025, James Kuntz. The property is located at 1801 Whit Road, Lebanon. Property is zoned single-family residential, comprised of just over a half acre. The lot is 185 feet wide, 125 feet deep, and they're requesting a residential fence height variance. Ben?
All right, there's a story behind this one, too. This request was actually triggered by activity by the city as opposed by the applicant. So as some of you may be aware, the city has been exploring a sidewalk project on Whit Road in this area. It's been a need for a number of years, and we actually have the funding this year to do it. This is a unique property, and it's actually two lots. One of them has all the appropriate the lot lines versus right-of-way. The north lot, though, actually, we found out, still owns to the center line of Witt Road. So it doesn't make it very easy to do a sidewalk if we don't own the property. So we actually approached the applicant about acquiring the necessary right-of-way in order to accommodate the sidewalk project. And the issue we ran into is they have an existing fence that you see shown in black that actually extends into the area that would become right-of-way. And so the fence was going to need to be removed or moved in order to accommodate our sidewalk project. So again, the need for a new fence was necessitated by the fact that the city was asking for some right-of-way to accommodate a sidewalk project. When the city engineer, Kevin Krulik, discussed this with the applicant, there was some concern on their part about there being additional pedestrian activity across the front of their property, which I think we hope that there is additional pedestrian activity, or otherwise a sidewalk wouldn't be necessary. So they were concerned about security and safety. They've got kids and a handful of dogs that use this property quite a bit. So they were concerned about only having a 4-foot chain link fence out there with people walking essentially on a sidewalk right past the edge of the fence. So they asked about the possibility of replacing that chain link fence with a privacy fence, again, to give them a little bit more privacy and security, but then also to provide some additional safety for their dogs while they're out in the yard. As you can see here, we worked with them a little bit. We didn't, as a city, necessarily want to support putting the privacy fence right on the property lines. So we worked with them to try to find a happy medium to still provide them use of their yard as much as the way they already use it as possible, but still provide some setbacks off of the property line, a little bit of distance, and then make sure certainly that the sights and visibility at the intersection are appropriate. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see this is actually on a corner lot, as it seems like every time we're talking to somebody about a fence right now, they live on a corner lot. So that's the issue here. You can see that up here on the northwest part of the property, the fence went all the way out to almost to the edge of the road. They are moving it back. It looks like a good 10 or 15 feet from what would be the new property line. It's about 30 feet from the road to where the new fence is proposed, which is what you see in this blue dashed line. So the old fence is out here right along the road, and they are moving it back 10 or 15 feet. That will still allow them, this is the area their dogs use a lot because it's the open area in the yard, so that still allows them some use of that area, but still gets the fence back off the property line quite a bit. Down here on the south end, the issue is that they've got a play set that's already sitting in that area that's enclosed by that fence. So they were able to scoot the fence back a little bit from the property line, but still keep their play area within the fence, which seems appropriate to me as well. So we have been able to find a happy medium. This legally gives them some use of the yard the way they already had it, but then still gets it off the property line. Again, this whole discussion started because the city approached them about some right-of-way for a sidewalk. So we have worked out with them what we felt like was an appropriate happy medium to allow them to put that privacy fence and give us some privacy with the additional pedestrian traffic they would see, but then provide us those site visibilities that we need at intersections. So for the record, then this is a request to allow them to put up a privacy fence in the front yard, both the fence height and opacity requirements. So that is the variance request that's before you tonight. For the record, we have addressed the 3 findings of fact in the staff report. The approval not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Again, we mentioned that we have provided for the site visibility triangle at the intersection of Elizabeth and Witt that you would see down at the south end of the property. There's plenty of visibility. It's over 40 feet from the corner of the fence out to the edge of the road. So that's not to the property line, but out to the edge of the road, there's 40 feet. So there's plenty of room for somebody to be able to pull out to Witt Road and have plenty of visibility along the street here. There's no issues with safety out there. Variance request number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent will not be affected in a substantial if there's any issues like this that we're having